Welcome to episode 114 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So it's a new book.
Yay! From my favorite series.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. So, it is your favorite series, but this book is a real jump out of the norm of this series. Because, obviously the first three are in Feyre's point of view, and then the one we don't talk about is, so short and nobody cares about it. Has too many points of view. And then we jump into this one.
Yeah.
So, what were your thoughts going into this book, I guess?
I guess... Actually, to be fair, so, the first three books were obviously Feyre's point of view. There might have been one or two of, Rhys in there a little bit, but it was mostly Feyre, right?
Yeah, because my niece was asking me, because the third book starts with a prequel that is Rhys's point of view from years ago, and she was like, is this dual point of view? And I was like, I really don't think it is, and I honestly don't remember. I know we did it, but
yeah,
I think it's mostly just Feyre.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was actually, I feel like, so this book came out in 2021, and I think there was a long, a bit of a long time in between Wings and Ruin and this book. Definitely a couple of years, I think.
2017.
Oh, so 4 years in between.
Yeah.
So long.
I don't know what, Frost and Starlight, is that the novella?
Yes.
That was 2018.
Okay, so at least 3 years since a book from the same universe was published. And I remember there actually being, rumors. Because when this book was announced, and nothing was said about it at first, and then people were, spreading rumors and gossip that, oh my god, this is a book about Nesta.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of remember being sort of the way I felt when they announced that Tower of Dawn was coming out, and that was Chaol's book. I sort of felt like that, because I was like, I hate Nesta. I don't like anything about Nesta. I like Elaine even less, but, I really don't like Nesta. She's a straight-up bitch. So, I'm hesitant to read this. I knew I was still going to read it, obviously.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't want to read about her.
Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised. And more pleasantly surprised than I originally... Tower of Dawn, I liked it. I read it. But I'll never read it again. Mm-hmm. That's a lie. I might, but
Well, you're going to for this podcast, so
yeah,
let me just tell you that straight up.
Yeah.
Prepare yourself.
But, few and far between, we'll say, right?
Yeah.
However, this book I actually enjoyed. It gave me further insight into Nessa's character. You see her growth, and you come to appreciate her so much more than originally.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I don't know, I really ended up liking it. And obviously, we get some new characters introduced that we fall in love with as well. And, we just get to know a little bit more about Cassian, and it's a really great book. And it's a really good jumping off point for the new direction.
Yes. And this one is a dual point of view, and it is Nesta and Cassian, if there was any doubt of what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was iffy going into it, because I was of the same mind. I was like, in the first few books, she just was such a bitch. Every turn, she was a huge bitch, and you're like, why is she like this, and how can I ever get past it as a reader?
Mm-hmm.
I can't empathize with somebody that knowingly is being a bitch all the time. Because, like, you could tell that she was a smart person. So it was interesting that was, like, she's making a choice. So, yeah, it was nice to get in her head. But I don't know. I guess it also wasn't my favorite series of Sarah J Maas. I still obviously liked it. But I was like, I'm going to read anything she puts out. Obviously, yeah. I have and I will. But I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to relate. I don't know if I'm going to care. But, like, I don't know. It's definitely, for me, I like it better than the original, like, the first book in the series, than Akhtar. I like this book better. I think this is only my second time reading it, though, so it'll be nice to, like,
be refreshed.
Yeah. I just, my biggest issue with her books now are, like, they're so long that I'm like, I can't reread them because it's just too much work.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I agree with you, but I am the type of reader that I am is I get sucked in and I get hooked, and I literally cannot put it down until I finished it. Mm-hmm. Which is problematic when you're reading like a 500 to 600 page novel. Mm-hmm. You're spending your entire day reading then, right? Yeah. Because you don't want to put it down, and then you're neglecting other things in your life just so you can get this book finished. So like, I agree with you. Like, a 200 page book is really only like a few hours of dedication, but a book of this size is like, well, geez, you got to read it all day. But, like, her writing, in my opinion, is good. That it's so good that you want to get sucked in, and you do get sucked in, and you want to keep reading.
Yeah.
But it's just hard when the books are so long.
Yeah. And, like, I just don't want to start it because I know it's an undertaking.
Yeah.
But also because it's an emotional undertaking for this book. Like, there's so much emotion to it.
But yeah, so it is definitely emotional. But I like it.
Yeah.
Anyway. We're just gonna get right into it because we have a lot to talk about. So we're just gonna say this, just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone and things could get a little saucy. Not this week though.
But this book is fucking saucy.
This book is very saucy, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Me too. I guess, like, that's the other thing is the first books in this series were technically YA, even though that's stretching it a tiny bit. Like, but this book is 100% NA.
Yeah.
Like, the word fuck is there
several times. Yeah.
And I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I know some people didn't like it, but I love it. I'm
here
for it.
I will say, too, though, a lot of people disliked her portrayal of Rhys and Feyre in this book. Mm-hmm. And, like, sort of said, like, they changed their entire characters and made them not who they were in the first 3 books. I disagree. I think, now maybe once we get into a bit of a deep dive, maybe I'll change my mind. I just feel like narrators are, by definition, like, if you are reading a first-person narrator, that narrator is not reliable, right? Yeah. Because you're getting everything from their point of view. Everything is their opinion and their bias on top of it. So, like, I don't think that... I just feel like Feyre wasn't a reliable narrator. We got her bias on all of the things. Now Nesta is not a reliable narrator because we're getting her bias and her opinion on things. So they're saying, like, oh, you know, and yeah, some of the things Rhys does might be slightly problematic, and we'll talk about it. But
he was problematic in the other books.
Yeah, he's always been slightly problematic.
Yeah.
So it just, you know, I feel like everyone's like, the characters are completely different. They're not. We're just seeing them through a different lens.
Yeah. And I think that, like, it's love it because it's showing how you can see people through it's the same person from the same writer. Like, Sarah J Maas knows this character, but she's showing us the different lenses that people see him, like, specifically Reese, I'll talk about, but seeing Reese through, and I love it because it is so true for all of us in everyday life. Like, people see you as how they want to see you, as how they saw you originally, and then, like, it doesn't matter what you do going forward, they're going to see you as, like, however they painted you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that is broadly, obviously, if you get to know people better, things change, whatever. But it's just, I love it because it's relevant and it's interesting. And I actually enjoy it a lot that we're seeing these characters from different points of view. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess we're reading. I don't know if we even said the book yet, but...
Oh, yeah.
A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas.
Oh, God.
We're reading chapters 1 to 13. I think, like, if you pressed on this podcast, you probably saw the name and you knew what we were doing. But if you didn't, sorry for the confusing first however many minutes. But yeah, chapters 1 to 13. And it's kind of starting out as a new-ish story. Obviously, you should read all of the other books beforehand. But we're starting off, and it is Nesta's point of view and Cassian's point of view in this book. And I don't think there's anyone else's other than, like, the bonus chapters. There's other people's point of views, but that's just to sell copies of books. So, so this book starts with the prologue, and it is Nesta's memory of the cauldron. So that happened in book 2, A Court of Mist and Fury. And it is when Tamlin, Lucian, and Ianthe schemed and ended up getting Elaine and Nesta thrown in the cauldron, and the King of Hybern, blah, blah, blah. But her memory is of Elaine being turned, and then the King of Hybern says, put her under, and no one can help her. But she notices Cassian is trying to help her, and as she's being, like, pushed under, she points to the King of Hybern, and it's a death promise. And she laughs at the fear in his eyes and goes under, and it's agony. And this is the part that's, like, new, because, like, the rest of it we knew from other people's points of view. But, like, this is her point of view, and it's agony, and she thinks they'll all pay, and then she rips out raw power of eternity, and she pulls it into her veins. So that's the stuff that, like, we didn't know what it was like under, like, in the cauldron, really.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. We jump over to Cassian's point of view now, and he knocks on Nesta's door at 7 a.m., and she has to unlock 4 locks before she opens the door. And she's super pale, thin, and unwell, and she's just standing there in a male shirt. And he hasn't seen her since a barge party a month ago, where apparently she and Amryn fought. And that is, like, the main highlight of that, because it keeps coming up. He's basically there to bring her to Farah's house, and she's already annoyed. And he tells her to kick the sorry bastard out, and that he'll be back in an hour. So there's a male in her house. Yeah. Cassian also, like, I don't know. Some of the thoughts that these people have in this book, I'm like, is that inappropriate? Because, like, he thinks of her inviting breasts and how he would court her if she was anyone else. And you're like, she's clearly not okay. Can we, like... Yeah. Like, maybe that's why he wouldn't court her, but I'm like, she's struggling, man. I know you can't help what you're thinking. Anyway, she has inviting breasts, so if there was any doubt. And he also obviously starts thinking about her and Elaine's powers and if they still exist since the cauldron broke in Akawar. Yes. They're wondering, like, when the cauldron broke, maybe all of their powers went away because of that.
Well, Nesta's powers haven't made an appearance since then.
Yeah. Yeah, and neither have Elaine's, apparently. Like, hers were, like, wild and unpredictable in, like, book 2 and 3.
But didn't she just had the gift of sight, right?
Yeah, but I feel like since then she hasn't really said crazy things.
Maybe not. Or maybe they've figured out how to help her channel them, maybe, since, like, they figured out what they were. Because before, they just thought she was, like, traumatized and rambling. But maybe when they figured out, oh, she's a seer, maybe they ended up training her in how to streamline her thoughts and, like, stuff like that. Who knows?
Yeah. But it seems like Cassian doesn't know anything about it, which doesn't mean anything, because he obviously, like, I don't think he has a close relationship with Elaine. If anyone does, it's Asriel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think this is more of a, like, in case you forgot, we don't know what their powers are and if they still have them.
Yeah.
Which happens in all books, like, obviously, if you read a series. And I think this book, too, like, technically, you could read this book if you didn't read all the other books. It would be weird as hell.
Yeah.
But, like, I think you could, because it starts with Nesta's story, and, like, the other parts of it, like, you could go back and read them. I wouldn't recommend it, but, you know. So we jump over to Nesta's point of view now, and she's not sure of the male's name who is in her house, but she thinks of riding him to her pleasure, and he's handsome, but he's small compared to Cassian, who she's obviously thinking about because she just saw him. So she gives him his shirt back and kicks him out. And I think, like, when she goes back into the room after he heard that Cass was there, he, like, was trying to crawl out the window, and she's like, hey.
Yeah, he was terrified that she knows who Cassian is, because he's an Illyrian warrior, and he's terrifying, so he was like, oh, shit. What have I gotten myself into?
Mm-hmm. Nesta also thinks about how sex, music, and alcohol are what keep her, like, help her keep herself under control and her power at bay. And this is a common theme through the entire book and is kind of mentioned a lot, especially this first week, that, like, these are her coping mechanisms that she's been using, not necessarily in a healthy way.
No. I will say, though, I'm shocked that, so, like, this is happening about a year after Akawar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sort of shocked that she has turned to sex so quickly, I guess. Like, she went from being in the human lands where, like, you know, sex before marriage is sort of frowned upon. And sleeping around is sort of not something that you do. And now, all of a sudden, she's just, like, sleeping willy-nilly with, like, anyone she can find.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I can kind of think of is, like, before her name, not that her name doesn't mean anything now, but to her it kind of doesn't, but, like, in the human world, it kind of meant something to her, but now where she doesn't care about Fae politics and she doesn't care about the courts and anything, like, the whole reason to not sleep around is gone.
Right. But
it is, like, very quick to go from 0 to 1,000.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, she also thinks how she knows Feyre is going to scold her about last night's bill, but she goes to wash up and she starts filling the tub, obviously, which reminds her of the cauldron, because I think actually in Akawar, we got a scene with her telling Feyre that, like, she struggles to take a bath now because it reminds her too much of the cauldron, and obviously PTSD. So yeah, she, like, gets a flash of the cauldron, and then she thinks of Highburn, and she thinks of her father, and how he came to save her, and it had been a waste, and it was all her fault. And, like, so was everything that happened to Elaine. Like, everything is her fault in her head.
Yeah.
Except for anything to do with Feyre, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
She also thinks of how she had been a virgin until one night, I guess, after the war, when she took a random home and learned what she liked. So, yeah, it very much was 0 to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Reese has also offered her jobs, and she knows it's for Feyre's sake, and that he hates her, and she hates herself for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And it just, like, because we understand why Reese hated her, but we were also like, I think we even said, like, last book, like, why does he hate her so much and not hate Elaine? Like, he forgave Elaine immediately, basically, and we're like, why?
Yeah. And I still believe that. It still bothers me that
me too.
That Reese is like hates Nesta and continues to hate.
Mm-hmm.
Like continue it does not go away. And like that's fine, but like yeah, Elaine is like somehow above it all. Like she could never go into the woods and go hunting. She could never soil her precious hands except to plant her flowers.
Yeah.
It's just like...
This is why I need a book in her point of view, because, like, there has to be more to it. Like, Sarah J Maas is too good of a writer to just leave us with, like, she's just a good girl.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be something else. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I hate it.
Obviously, we don't get any more information than that.
Yeah, and, like...
At all.
The thing that bothers me, though, is that, like... So, we had all of ACOWAR, and, like, the three sisters finally sort of had some semblance of, like, bonding and coming together and all of that. And it's like, that is just wiped away at this point.
Yeah.
You know, and that bothers me. Like, why bother writing all of that progress, if you're only going to just, like, bring it back to less than what it was before?
Yeah. And, like, she kind of thinks about it a bit this week, I think, or maybe next week, I'm not really sure. But, like, Nesta thinks about it a bit, and how, like, during the war, it almost seemed like they could be sisters again, and then she started pushing them away. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I didn't expect this. I'll say that. Like, when I went from, I guess you kind of had an idea in Frost and Starlight, or whatever that.
Yes, for sure, yeah.
Novella. But, like, going from ACOWAR to this book, I didn't really expect it to be this bad. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely something. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like the way ACOWAR ended could have just been the end, and it would have been fine. And then I think they were like, you can write more books about these people. And she was like, well,
okay.
Let me develop this storyline. And, like, I completely understand where she is now, but it really did go from, like, a peak of where you thought they were fine to down. So I don't know. I do feel like you could read those 3 books and call it an end and be happy with it. But if you continue, then you're like, shit. It's not a happily ever after.
Nope.
Not at all. So Cassian comes back, and he has tea for her, and she feels some guilt for, like, I guess every time she sees him, she feels guilty about, in ACOWAR, she called out to him, and he flew towards her, and then, like, thousands of Illyrians died. Yeah. So she feels a lot of guilt about that, but she thinks she couldn't let Cassian die. So
I think she feels more guilty. Not that I think she feels more guilty that she let, that I guess, again, it's all her fault. She let those 1,000 Illyrian warriors die.
Yeah.
Right?
Because the cauldron,
it was like a beam of cauldron power that, like, just wiped out an entire troop of Illyrians. It was like 1,000 Illyrians.
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, she sees that as her fault, but she's also like, I think literally every time she sees Cassian, that's all she can think about, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. He's obviously in her house now, apartment thing, and he says that she doesn't change her sheets between visitors, and you're like, eee.
Yeah.
And he's like, if I can smell it, they can smell it. And she's like, it doesn't stop them, so I'm not worried.
Yeah,
And
so...
like, cool, this is...
Yeah. So essentially she's just skanking around a little bit.
Yeah, which, like, fine, but hygiene is nice, too. Like, you should probably change your sheets. I know, like, I'm gonna stand on that hill. I'm fine with, you do whatever you want, but I think you should probably wash your sheets between.
But, like, she doesn't even clean her house. Like, her dishes are piled up. Like, her place is a disaster.
Yeah, and, like, obviously that's something you can attribute to depression, too. Like, that happens to people who are depressed. But, yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, like, I think Feyre has offered her, I don't know if this is true, but, like, hasn't Feyre offered her, like, a housekeeper or, like, someone to clean or something? Or she could have gotten someone to clean?
Yeah.
Like, she basically gets them to pay all of her bills, so what would be, like, a housekeeper coming in for a few hours? But yeah, so she also thinks of the unrest since the war, and it's been 14 months since Akabor, I guess. And with the wall down, obviously the humans don't feel super safe, and Fae are trying to take land, and the human queens have armies, and the youngest queen is the one that went into the cauldron and came out as a crone and now blames Nesta for it. So, like, there's a lot of shit still going on that you kind of, when you finish Akabor, you're like, it's all wrapped up in a pretty little bow.
Yeah.
But this, like, comment is to be like, nope, it's not. There's still more to it. So Cassian takes her to Feyre's new riverside house. And I think we heard about this in Frosted Starlight, where he was like, we'll build a new house however you want it.
Yeah.
It'll be great.
Yeah. So now it's built.
So it's built, yeah. And Rhys basically bought it and let Feyre design it. And Nesta was apparently here once before, but she was drunk. And Feyre's paintings are everywhere and of everyone, but there are none of Nesta or her mother. And that kind of, like, hurts her. But, like, obviously she's not going to tell anyone that it hurts her.
Yeah.
But, like, it does.
But she's also very, like, of course there's none of me. Like, she's not, like, she's hurt, but also not shocked. She is constantly referring to herself as a monster during this entire book. Like, she's a monster. She's a monster. She's over and over and over again. So, like, that's, you know, she's like, oh, of course there's none of me. But there's literally a portrait of her dad with Elaine, but she's not included. I sort of think that's a little dirty. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Feyre,
why not?
Like, if you have a picture of Elaine in your house, you should have one of Nesta.
100%.
Like regardless of what type of terms you're on. Mm-hmm. Like, bitch, please.
Yeah, I do. I find it super weird. Like, I don't think she should have a picture of her mother if she doesn't want one. That's fine.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Feyre didn't have a relationship with her mother. We know that from all the other books. But... fuck, I'd have a picture of Nesta killing the King of Hybern. That's what I'd have.
Yeah. Or, like...
yeah.
Like, that... Weird. Remember after Elaine was kidnapped, and the three of them get back to... and Feyre gets back to camp with Elaine, and the three of them curl up together and fall asleep?
Yeah.
What's wrong with something like that? That was a heartwarming moment for them. Like... even if you're not on the best of terms, it's not like they haven't had any decent moments. Yeah. They've had a couple. And, like, can you imagine just showing somebody around your house and literally every single person that you know is in paintings on the walls except for you?
Well, and think back to ACOTAR, where Nesta was the one who was like, go back to your High Lord. Like, I understand. Like, we don't need you. And not like...
not in a mean way.
Like, she's not saying it in a mean way. She's saying it because she knows. Like, put up a picture of when she was there for her then. Like, yeah, it is weird. I don't think it's cool.
No.
But yeah, it's very much... Nesta's very much... oh, I deserve it. Obviously, I'm not going to be put up on the walls here. Like, why would I be? And it's sad. So they go to the study, and Feyre, Rhys, and Amryn are there, and Amryn is pissed. And Nesta thinks like so much has changed between them because they were kind of close before, but Nesta saw to it that they're now enemies, basically. She also thinks of like how Amryn's power is light and heat, but her silver flames come from a colder, darker place. And she refuses to learn her powers. And she also apparently doesn't have any normal fae, like high fae powers. So I don't really know what the like normal high fae powers are, but she doesn't have them, whatever they are.
I feel like the normal high fae ones, are they not like the ones that are associated with the elements?
Oh, maybe, yeah. That would make sense. Good point. So obviously this all starts out and it's about her bill the night before, and Amryn basically is a bit of a dick and calls her a drunk and a whore. And Nesta isn't in the mood for a scolding, but Rhys tells her to sit back down. And she has to, like, fight the dominance in his voice because obviously fae are more, I don't want to say alpha-based, but kind of alpha-based. And obviously he's more powerful. So she kind of retorts and is like, "You're not my high lord, and this isn't my court." And it's like, I do find that bit annoying. Like, I feel like this is maybe, I don't know if this is the first time she says it, but I find it a bit annoying that she says it so much, that Rhys isn't her high lord. Because, like, what is she gonna do? Leave?
But also, like, she can't say this is not her court, he's not her high lord, when he's literally paying for everything. Yeah. He's paying for her apartment, he's paying for her to eat, he's paying for her to drink, she's paying for all her clothes. Literally every single thing that she does and has is because he's bankrolling the entire thing. So, like, her saying he's not my high lord, he kind of is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, if you go to the most recent interaction we've had with them, she says it again, and it just pisses me off. I'm over it. But anyway, Feyre kind of starts talking now, and, like, she doesn't go about this the best way. She's, like, trying, like, she's coming from a good place. We know that because we've been in her point of view. But the way that she says stuff is obviously not conductive to how Nesta lives. But she says that she'll accept some blame for how far she let it go, but that things need to change. And obviously Nesta's pissed. We go over to Cassian's point of view, and Feyre tells Nesta that she's moving into the House of Wind, and each morning she'll train at the Illyrian camps with Cassian, and after lunch she'll work in the library beneath the house. And Cassian can see how pissed Nesta is, but Feyre has an impenetrable shield which even masks her scent. And I don't know about you, but when I read this book the first time, I immediately knew what this meant, and I was pissed.
They very much, though, like, just, they almost, like, mention it in passing. So, like, it's very easy to miss.
Yeah, I guess.
So.
They say, yeah, so it's in Cassian's point of view, and, like, he's a bit thick. We love him, but he's thick. But he says that Rhys is learning from Hellion how to, like, do these impenetrable shields, and it's Feyre is trying to break it to, like, test it kind of thing, and that's why she has this shield on her, which is a good enough reason for him. He's like, cool, I get it. But, I don't know, when I read it, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? But we'll get to that, I think, next week when it comes up. So, we go back to right now, but Amryn is telling Nesta that her things are being packed as they speak, and since Nesta is the human emissary, and she didn't resign from that job that she agreed to do in Akawar, and since she also spends the court's money, she is obviously a part of this court. And you're like, yes, duh. Cassian thinks to earlier when Rhys got the bill from last night and it was at breakfast and he read out each item. And, like, Feyre just sat there at breakfast and was crying because she was, like, embarrassed and sad and all that shit. But Rhys then developed a plan, and Elaine agreed to it, and Amren was tasked with telling Nesta about it to try to, like, save the relationship between Nesta and Rhys, which doesn't exist. They hate each other.
Yeah.
You may as well just say it was Rhys's idea.
Well, but I guess it's to sort of make it so that they don't hate each other even more.
Yeah. It's not going to work. Amren also tells Nesta that she won't be a prisoner, but she'll have to climb 10,000 stairs down to get out of the House of Wind.
This is fine for me. I don't hate this.
What do you mean?
Like, you're saying, like, just, like, she's not a prisoner, but she sort of is, but, like, I think this is fine.
I think it's fine. I don't think you have to say she's not a prisoner. You're kind of, in the shape that she's in, she's obviously not going to make it down. Also, I don't understand why it's so hard for her to go down.
Downstairs!
But, going up is super easy.
I know. But you know what?
Downstairs hurts your knees.
You know what?
I will say that.
Like, couldn't you just sit on your bum and, like...
Slide?
Yeah. And, like, also...
I don't know.
I don't understand, so, like... The library, they want her to work in the library, which is in the basement of the house, right? So the house is on top of the mountain, and then the library is in the basement, like, sort of in the mountain.
Yeah.
The stairs are completely separate. How is she getting down to the library okay? Is it just one set of stairs?
I have no idea.
I know you don't.
To the library.
I know. But, like, it's not like there's an elevator.
Maybe there is. Only to the library. Because, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, Cassian can't... I guess he can be flying her down to the library?
No, because it says several times that he, like, drops her off and then goes elsewhere, and then she has to get herself to the library.
I don't understand.
Me neither.
I don't know. But yeah.
Add it to our list of questions.
Right? So yeah, I'm just like, you can't say she's not a prisoner if you know that she's never gonna get out of this house.
Yeah.
Like, the point is that these 10,000 stairs are hard to get down.
And, yeah.
10,000 is a lot of stairs.
It's a lot of stairs.
Though.
But I just don't understand. It's down. You're going down.
And, like, the whole thing is she's going down. And, like, it becomes a thing that she does often. But she goes down, and then she walks up. And she walks up fine. And I'm like, I could walk down many stairs. Then turning around and walk back up, I would rather just lie there. I would rather not. If I'm so tired that I can't continue down, I will not be able to turn around and go back up.
Yeah. Agreed.
That doesn't make any sense.
Also, I feel like we need to assess how high is an average stair? Like, how inches? Centimeters? Feet?
Well, like, isn't a floor 10 stairs normally in our world? So it's like 100 floors. So I don't, like, what kind of building is that right? 100? No, it's 1,000 floors. If each floor is 10 stairs, it's 1,000 floors.
Okay, so I looked it up.
Okay.
So we haven't really gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But we're discussing it anyway. The average vertical stair is 10 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Everything is 10s.
However, in the book, it very clearly states that each step is 1 foot.
Which is 12 inches.
Which is 12 inches. Which is, when we're talking stairs and going up and down them, 2 inches is a significant amount.
Yes. But you would think so would being a fae be a significant difference than being a human? No?
I guess.
But yeah, no. That would make it harder for sure.
Yeah. So
that's 10,000 feet.
Yes.
Which means nothing to me because meters is what I deal in.
Well, I actually accidentally just looked it up. The average, like when you make a step, like a stride, when you are stepping and walking, your average step is 2.5 feet.
Okay.
Like this way. So that means that, wait for it, let me math. Wait. Let me calculate. Whoops. It's 4.
Yes. 4,000.
4,000. So it's 4,000. I don't know why I just did that math.
Feet.
Yeah, but I don't really know what I was accomplishing there.
What is...
Oh, I think I was trying to say, like, 4,000, like, strides, then.
Yeah, but you're still only gonna do 1 foot
I
per
guess.
stair.
I mean,
normally.
you could do 2. Might take longer.
Could.
Maybe not.
So it's 3,048 meters. If, like, 10,000 feet is 3,048 meters.
Which is...
If that means more to you.
It doesn't.
3 kilometers.
That's a lot of kilometers.
Yeah.
Which is about, what, a mile?
1.6 kilometers is 1 mile. So it's almost 2 miles.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, 1.89 miles. That's a high fucking mountain.
But then on top of that, so not only is she having to go down the stairs, it's another half mile then from the house into town. So, whew, that's like 4 kilometers just to go for like some fun.
Yeah.
And then think about it. So like if she wanted to go for like some company, she can't very well invite them back to her house. It'd be like,
no, unless they have wings.
Come back to my house. It's 10,000 steps.
That'd be funny though. If you don't make it up, we can't have sex.
How much do you want it?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that was our math on stairs. So Amryn tells Nesta that she can agree to all of this, or she can go back to the human lands. And Nesta's like, obviously she can't go back to the human lands. She's Fae now, and they don't like Fae. That's not a possibility. But Nesta tells Feyre that this is all her fault. And she also says that Elaine needs access to the house to be able to see her. But Feyre says she can go if she wants to. And Nesta starts to think about how she has been pushing Elaine away recently. So that is a reason why Elaine probably won't want to see her. Nesta asks to talk to Feyre alone. And she is super pissed, obviously. But she thinks of why she put the distance between them all after Elaine was taken by the Cauldron in Akawar. She thinks of, like, how awful that felt and how it got worse from there. And now she's got, like, this bone-deep horror in her that, like, someone will get taken from her again. So that is why she's pushing everyone away. She has so much trauma from the war, and she doesn't want to get close to anybody. Mm-hmm. And she's also been, like, punishing her power for failing her, so she's been ignoring it too. So there's a lot of self-hatred, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of trauma that, like, is present.
Pretty much all of her actions stem from fear, trauma, PTSD, and self-loathing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which makes it a super interesting book. Mm-hmm. And that is not sarcasm, even though it kind of sounds like it. So Nesta and Feyre fight a bit about it, and Nesta's like basically tells Feyre that it's Rhys's money anyway, not hers, to kind of like she even thinks about how she knows exactly what to say to people to piss them off. Mm-hmm. And, like, she will choose to say that just because she can.
Yeah.
And she also says, like, Feyre's always sacrificing for her poor sisters. And it kind of does feel like that. And, like, obviously, what was she supposed to do? But, like, you get where Nesta's coming from, and, like, you can understand what she's saying. Even though, like, in ACOTAR, Nesta obviously thought that their father should do something. And that's why she didn't do anything, is because she was like, I'm waiting for him to
step up,
figure something out.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like, I kind of get what she's saying in her own way, but I'm also like, Feyre kept you alive. Like, yeah. Maybe you should. But yeah. Feyre also calls, like, the bill that morning embarrassing to get in front of her family. And that word hurts Nesta, because to her, family was their family. Like, their mother, father, Elaine, and Feyre was her family. And now Feyre has this whole new family, and she's kind of just, like, shrugged off the old one completely.
Well, this is her chosen family, right? Is the difference.
Yeah.
So but, like, you can't really blame Feyre either, because she was literally treated like dirt for so long. And she finally found people that wouldn't treat her like dirt. Huh, go figure. Like, why would she want to be a part of this messed up family that's just the three sisters now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I completely agree, but, like, Nesta hasn't let go of it like Feyre did. And she also she's the oldest and Feyre's the youngest, so she just had more time in the family, so now she feels it like a betrayal. I see both sides, but I understand what Nesta's saying, but it's also like, if you're hurt by something, you kind of have to be like, hey, that hurts me.
Yeah.
Or it's never going to change.
Yeah.
But yeah, Feyre also tells her that, like, if her court can't control her sister, how can they be allowed to rule? And you're like, I don't think that's the best thing to say.
No, but I don't disagree either. Like, there's sort of... Unfortunately, when you are in a leadership position, then there are going to be extra eyes on you. There's going to be extra attention on you. So, like, you sort of are stuck in the public eye, and you sort of have to act that way.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Well, I don't agree that it happens. Like, I think that people should just be able to do whatever the fuck they want. But I know it does happen. I just think she didn't need to say that to Nesta. It's like, this is not you don't need to kick her while she's already down,
I guess.
But it just makes Nesta think about how she's been controlled since birth, and we're kind of getting a bit of, like, we don't know her past. Like, we don't really know her relationship with their mother, and we do get a whole lot more of that in this book, but clearly it was more than what Feyre's relationship with her mother was. Feyre also tells her that her apartment is being condemned and it will be rebuilt. And Nesta thinks, like, this is the only thing that she's chosen for herself. And Feyre always gets what she wants. So she's going to tear down her building. And she's, like, kind of defeated by that thought, because literally it's the only choice she's made for herself. So that's kind of sad. And then Nesta says she'll never talk to Feyre again. And Feyre says that's fine. She's done enabling her.
Great.
So, like, it's always a hard, like, I don't know. These are hard conversations. It's hard situations. Like, what are you supposed to do when somebody is in a situation like this? Like, there's literally TV shows about interventions and shit. Like, it's all so hard, and there's no right steps that people are supposed to take, and there's so many emotions involved, and, like, it's hard to make somebody work on themselves if they don't feel like they need to. So, like, it's all just a clusterfuck. Like, how are you supposed to force somebody to get better if they don't want to?
Yeah.
They're trying what they can, I guess, but...
Well, I guess that's the thing. Like, it's really hard to see someone you love self-destruct. Like, that's sort of what interventions are for. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to help them stop self-destructing. And I guess this is sort of their way of having an intervention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, fun times. We go over to Cassian's point of view now, and he's in Rhys's study, and he thinks there's an interesting model of their world, and Cass doesn't understand it, but it allows Rhys to ponder the existence of life outside of their world, which is just a fun throwaway, that is said.
Mm-hmm.
Then I actually kind of love, there's like a whole section here where Cassian starts to think of Feyre's paintings and how they make him pause and feel things and think, and how like he saw a painting and it was so amazing, and you're like, this is clearly to go against that meme that everyone was talking about, like Feyre's actually a terrible painter. I feel like Sarah J Maas put this in here to be like, no, she's good. And I love it. So Cassian and Rhys debrief a bit, and Rhys tells him that he's been doing a good job getting the Illyrians in line, so now he gets more responsibility other than Nesta, and he needs to now figure out what the queens are up to. And he's like, what the fuck, isn't that what Az does? And Rhys is like, Az has so much on his plate. And you're like, okay. So they talk about Nesta a bit, and Rhys says that he's afraid of Nesta because they don't understand her powers at the moment. So, like, he kind of tells him, like, if you can figure out anything about her power, that'd be great. And then they also, for some reason, joke about how he's about to, like, fuck Feyre a whole bunch in the house. Like, he kicks out the servants, and he's like, we're gonna have a fuck fest, ha ha ha. And I'm like, this is so weird. I don't know.
He doesn't exactly say that. It's more like innuendos.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess, like, we got that when in, like, the ACOTAR books, right? Like...
Oh, for sure. And I think it's kind of, like, trying to be like, they're still fucking all the time, but I'm also like, it's Cassian's point of view. I don't know if we needed... I don't know if we needed that.
I guess it's like,
sure.
They're still happy.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also interesting because Cassian feels a bit jealous. He doesn't, like, not in a mean way or anything, and it's kind of like we talked about the last book. Like, obviously, jealousy is just a feeling you get. It's about your actions. But he is a bit jealous about the idea of mates and how Rhys has one now and he doesn't, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he also thinks to himself that he wants to be gone before they do start having sex because he doesn't want to feel the power when Rhys comes, basically. He doesn't say it like that, but that's basically, like, what is implied. And I'm like, oh, okay. And this is also where we get a line that everybody, when this book first came out, with, like, jumped on. Whereas, like, when they were dumb youths, he, Rhys, and Asriel used to, like, sleep with females in the same room with each other and, like, swap around and, like...
They did not swap. Did they? Does it say that?
I don't know what exactly it says. Do I have it here? Oh, it's... Yeah.
Yikes. I blew past that.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like a lot of people clung to after they read this book. So yeah, just had to bring it up because it's a sentence that's said in the book.
Yeah, it is.
It's not something I did. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I can guarantee you, we have never done that.
No. Oh God, I think you've been with your husband since we were friends, haven't you?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Dear Lord. Okay, good time. Anyway, so he leaves that room. We're done with that conversation. Moore shows up and congratulates Cassian on his promotion to courtier. And Nesta looks at him, and he knows that she's, like, about to say something bitchy. So he calls himself a bastard-born nobody before she can say anything. And more than winnows them to the house. And Cass has to fly them to the balcony, because you can't actually winnow into the House of Wind.
Yeah.
You
can winnow to, like, the barrier, and then you have to fly the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm. And Nesta actually thinks, like, she would rather just fall than actually, like, be in his arms while he's, like, flying her down. She'd rather just fall and, like, crash into the balcony. And you're like, ugh. The house also brings back memories of worrying about Elaine and that she was going to kill herself. And, like, they don't really say it that explicitly. But, like, at the beginning or middle-ish of ACOWAR, when we get back, like, Elaine is depressed, and she is, everyone's worried about her. And Nesta kind of thinks, like, it's odd that now Elaine is the well-adjusted one of the two of them, since, like, at that time she was the one fighting to make sure that Elaine was okay, and now she's the one that they're basically putting on house arrest.
Yeah.
Her instinct is to push Cassian away with, like, the exact painful words that she knows will get him to fuck off. And he can tell that she's thinking something, so he asks her to say it, but she doesn't bother. She just says that she's tired, and she goes to her room. And basically, what I think of, like, she disassociates, and she closes the blinds, and she gets into bed, and she closes her eyes, and she just breathes. And it's like 11 a.m. in the morning right now. We go over to Cassian's point of view, and he goes to meet Moore, and they go to, like, a little cafe kind of thing, I feel like. That's what I picture. I think that's what it said. And she says that they would be better off throwing Nesta into the Court of Nightmares because she'd thrive there. And Cassian agrees, but says that's what they're trying to avoid. And Moore kind of realizes that, like, the subject and the thought of Nesta kind of pains him, and he says, yeah, it does. Which is kind of like a tidbit. But I feel like Moore is, like, I guess she's super protective of a lot of people, and that's why she's, like, being as bitchy as she is, but I don't love it. I feel bad about how she's portrayed in this book, as little as she is, too.
Yeah.
But he asks more about Valahan, which is an ancient mountainous Fey territory, and Moore is an emissary there. And they've been enemy and ally in the past, so they kind of flip-flop. But they don't want to sign a new treaty because they think there will likely be a new war, and they can get more land from human territories if they just, like, wait it out and don't sign this treaty that Moore has brought to them. So we also get, like, Valahan, Modazair, and Rask are 3 places.
Kingdoms, continents, like...
yeah, something. They're ruled by their own people. Like, Prithian's its own thing, and these things are their own thing, too. But they were brought up in ACOWAR, maybe even ACOMAF, as places that, like, they could have allied with Hybern and ruined them all. And they could still ally with Hybern's people, because Hybern's people are still pissed. They just don't have their OG king, because he's dead.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, like, trying to get Valahan into this treaty before they decide to turn on them. But they won't sign it. And that is Moore's job, and she will be gone almost the entire book to deal with that. So this is basically the reason that Cassian needs to, like, work out what the queens are doing. And Moore says he won't get near them, but she knows that they're up to something. And Cassian says, like, they would need substantial information to risk a war against the queens. And Cassian says that Vasa might know, like, what the queens are up to, because she knows them, because she is a queen. So Vasa is one of the queens that the other human queens sold her to.
A sorcerer lord.
Kaje? Yeah.
I think it's, isn't
remember.
it Koche?
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 Koche? Something like that. Starts with a K. But they sold her to, a sorcerer. And she has a curse on her now. So, like, she doesn't have a whole lot of loyalty to her sisters, but she does know them.
Yeah.
And she is currently living with Jurian and Lucian. So Cassian's like, well, why don't we just ask Lucian? He's still an emissary to the Night Court. But Moore says, like, Lucian's gonna be biased. He's living with them. Like, he can't give an honest report. Like, even if he tries to, he'll be biased because he lives there. So he needs to go visit ASAP. And he tells Moore at this point that he misses her and she's been gone a lot. And he tells her that they would warn her if Kier decided to visit. Kier is her father, and in Act of War, they made a treaty with him that if his people fought, they would let him visit Valaris. But apparently he hasn't visited yet because Eris convinced him not to come, and it was as a show of good faith, and like Rhys saw in Eris's mind like what he offered and everything, and he buys it as like a nice thing.
Yeah. What I don't understand is like Kier found out about Valaris after the attack, after they showed the Mortal Queen's Valaris, right? Sort of as their good show of faith. And then Kier was like, hey, can't he just wipe Kier's, like, Rhys? Can't Rhys just wipe Kier's memory so he doesn't remember it anymore?
You would think.
Solve a problem.
Yeah. Like, he reached out and made everybody forget about it when he was under the mountain.
Yeah.
But he can't make this one man forget about it. Yeah. Listen, I don't know. We needed a reason for Moore not to be in this book at all, I guess. Like, it's half she's gone for emissary business, and it's half she doesn't want to be there because she feels like Rhys has ruined Valaris for her.
Yeah, and, like, Cassian even says at this moment that, like, she's always been really, like, positive and happy, but, like, he can tell that her light, quote-unquote, has, like, dimmed ever since finding out, like, what Rhys did. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's basically like, he's not coming anytime soon, and she just says, it doesn't matter. And you're like, yeah, it's kind of an obvious point. So we go back to Nesta's point of view now, and she wakes up in the dark and starts to panic that it was all just a dream, and she's actually back in the cottage. She thinks of her mother then, and, like, we've heard a bit about her mother from Feyre's point of view. Very little, just that she was distant, kind of a bitch. She died.
Yeah.
Feyre had no attachment to her.
Except for that, like, crazy promise that she would always stay with and take care of them.
Like, why did she make her promise it? She didn't even know her. Like, it's so weird. Yeah, I forgot about that. Blocked it out of my brain. So yeah, we get that, like, she actually was kind of nice is a subjective word, but she treated Nesta kind of like a peer.
I feel like I took it more like she doted on Nesta, like, made sure she had all the proper training, like, sort of trained her to do everything that she thought would be expected of her, and just sort of ignored the other two.
Yeah, but it was more so, like, it felt like it wasn't loving. It felt like it was more manipulated and calculating than, like, it wasn't out of the goodness of her heart that she did it. Anyway, that's just, like, kind of what I felt from it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
Yeah. So, her mother, she thinks of how her mother told her that Elaine would marry for love because she's beautiful, so she doesn't have to worry about any of this stuff because she'll just find somebody who loves her because of her looks. But Nesta is her cunning little queen, and she would marry for conquest. And it makes her think about how, like, Nesta almost married Thomas, who we heard about in the first book. He was the woodcutter's son, and I think when Feyre left, she was like, don't marry Thomas, his father beats his mother, and, like, he doesn't do anything about it. So that's kind of what she's thinking about now. she's not thinking about Feyre telling her, but just about that.
But I think she said too that when Nesta broke things off with him, he tried to, like, force himself on her.
Yeah, and, like, that, I guess, there is a excerpt or something from one of the main 3 books that is, she meets with Cassian, he comes to see if they, like, have a letter from the queens or whatever. It has to be the 3rd book, obviously. No, it has to be the second book. Whatever. Yeah. So, it's right after that event happened. So, like, if you read that, you'll get some background. But she does talk about it at some point.
I think
during this book.
I think he mentions it in my section.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
or maybe not. Maybe it's in your section. I don't know. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, she brings it up herself sometimes. But yeah, he, like, was forceful with her, and, like, yeah, obviously it's not great. So yeah, she is not feeling great. And she's just, like, lying in bed, and she's just like, I guess I'll try to go back to sleep, basically. Like, she realizes that she is in the House of Wind, and she's fine-ish. Yeah. We go over to Cassian's point of view now, and he's in bed, and he hears a door close, and he pulls out a knife, and he has, like, 12 in his room. He's like, there's definitely so many blades in this house that we've all forgotten about because there's just everywhere. Mm-hmm. Which is just kind of funny. I'd love to, like, look around the house for, like, the smutty books and all the blades. Like, a treasure trove. He starts to panic that someone got in, like when Nesta ran to him in the library, because, like, the library is a part of this house in some way that we don't really understand. Yeah. But, I guess, like, when in book 3, when those twins came in, they were in the library, and, like, he's kind of got a bit of PTSD himself about that moment. Mm-hmm. But he realizes that it's Az. So, he's like, cool, that's great. Yeah. And then Rhys speaks mind to mind with him, because Rhys is at his own house, and it's like 3 a.m, and Rhys is just like, he's taking a break from apologizing to Feyre. So obviously taking a break from fucking her brains out. Yeah. Yeah, because that's what they were doing. Yeah. We talked about it earlier. And Rhys just says he's checking in, and I almost said Castile. That was not right. Cassian says that Nesta basically just went to bed and is likely still sleeping, but, like, that's all she's done today. Which is, like, obviously not great. Like, we can tell that she's depressed here. Like, there's something. Everyone is something. Breakfast the next morning, Nesta is dressed in her fighting leathers, and she feels weird wearing pants. So we're back to her point of view. And she's kind of, like, refusing to eat, because she doesn't really eat a lot anymore. She doesn't have the appetite for it. She just drinks. Doesn't care about food. Yeah. But Cass is obviously telling her that she needs it for energy to train. Like, obviously, makes sense. Mm-hmm. And she's kind of getting annoyed because he's being very pushy. So she asks if there are, like, any other areas in her life that he'll be presiding over. And, like, it is true. Like, she has zero control right now over anything. So I get where she's coming from. Mm-hmm. She does ask him how long the lesson's going to be, and he says 2 hours, and she says she won't be participating, and he says not eating won't bring your father back. And I'm like, why? Why would you say that? Why are we going for, like, this bunch of a blow at this moment? This seems ridiculous.
To be fair, I don't think it was the right moment, but, like, I think she is hurting so much more from her father's death than she wants to let on. So, yeah. I think the fact that he notices that and, like, sort of realizes that she is hiding the hurts, because she has said a whole lot in this book. She's, like, focused on her father being, like, a terrible like, he was not a good father, and, like, he did not provide for them, he did not stick up for them, he just, like, wasted away. He let Feyre, like, go into the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Did she, like, she also let Feyre go into the woods, but, like, her father sucked during the last, like, 5-6 years. And it was only at the end did he finally decide to step up. And, like, she just can't reconcile that idea of him saving them with how terrible he was.
Yeah.
So, like, she still misses him because he did do something at the end. Like, he did save her, and he said these really nice things to her at the end. But, so, like, the fact that she's still grieving over that and that he recognizes that, like, I do appreciate that he knows. I don't, like, he knows what she's like. She's stubborn, she's brusque, she is, like, so, like, just doesn't want anyone to notice anything about her. And I just feel like saying that, he didn't approach it in the right way.
No, I don't think it was the right way. But I think he kind of realizes that like, she gets under his skin and he gets under her skin, and it's just like, that's the way they are, so they just snap at each other. But he does say that, like, she isn't the first one to go through this, and it is terrible, but she'll get through it. And she kind of just cuts him off, because she's just like, when you're feeling like this, it doesn't matter that other people have done it and got through it. You're feeling away, whatever. So she just tells him that he doesn't know anything, and to keep his fucking opinions to himself, and he says he will if she eats. So she actually does, and she forces down the, like, I don't know, eggs and oatmeal. So she goes to walk away and says she looks forward to his silence, and he kind of, like, gets up and crowds her, and she thinks of, like, how big he is, because, like, obviously all the Bat Boys are super tall, they've got wings, they're, like, jacked, so they're huge.
Woo!
Exactly. We love it.
I'm okay with it.
Exactly. And so she also thinks of, like, how it's hard to resist, and, like, he's hard to resist since their kiss and him nuzzling her neck. And I don't really remember, like, they kissed in the third book, I guess, did they? I don't know. When did they kiss?
Was it when he was, like, dying?
Maybe. I can't remember. It's not something
It wasn't during the Frost and Starlight, was it?
Oh, it might have been. Oh, there's a question on Reddit, because they're like, I don't understand when this was. Oh, it's a Akamath bonus chapter.
Oh,
and I have the link. I don't think I've read it. Maybe I did. It's called Wings and Embers. Maybe this is the one. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. No, I must have read this one. This is the one I was actually talking about, but I don't remember them kissing because I've only read it once. Anyway, not the point. So they kiss and nuzzle necks in a bonus chapter. So obviously there's a lot of chemistry here. There's a lot of sexual tension here. There's a lot of all of that bullshit. She also thinks of how during ACOWAR, he said that he regrets that they didn't have time, and he'll find her in the next world. And, like, I feel like that's something that, like, she thinks about a lot. Mm-hmm. Which, like, obviously you would, but she likes to deflect. Like, when she starts to feel like she could get close to him, she likes to push him away. So she just says, like, if he thinks this training will result in him in her bed, then he's delusional. And she'd rather let a street dog stay in her bed. And he says, it won't be her bed. She'll be climbing into his. So, like, you know.
Yeah, essentially saying, like, he's not gonna approach her. She's gonna have to be the one that approaches him.
Yeah, which, you know. So we go over to Cassian's point of view, and his point of view always kills me because it's, like, all about her body all the time. Especially these first few chapters, but it's like, she's walking away, and he thinks that those pants are going to kill him. And he has to settle himself, because he's hard, of course, because he can see her ass in pants. And normally she doesn't wear dresses, like, I get it. But he just thinks that he wants to, like, roll around in the sheets with her, and, like, he wants to worship her ass. I'm like, fair enough.
It seems, so, like, I guess this whole thing is very, I guess, basic and animalistic. So, like, it is very sexual.
Yeah. And, like, this book is obviously sexual if you were not aware. Yeah, so he also kind of thinks of the moment where he told her that he wished they had time, and he thinks, like, after the war, he thought there was a chance, but then on the solstice, she made it clear there wasn't, and that was in Court of
Frost and Starlight.
Frost and Starlight is when we get solstice. And she made it clear that there was, like, no future for them in it, basically, because she hated herself so much.
But she doesn't say that.
No. Of course not. She just pushes him away. But I think during that book, he had a gift for her, and everyone was like, "What's the gift? Oh my god, so interesting!" And then we get here that he spent months finding this gift, and he just, like, flicked it into the Sidra and doesn't give a fuck. And we're like, oh, cool. That's a letdown. I thought we were going to get more about this gift. I didn't think it was going to just be like, and he flung it into the Sidra.
I know. I'd like to know what it is.
I think we do get what it is. We'll find out. Yeah, but still, it's gone, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But he also thinks, like, that night he almost laid his heart bare towards her, and he won't be doing that again because obviously he's been hurt by her. So Cassian then flies Moore and Nesta outside of the wards of the house, and Moore winnows them to Windhaven, where they will be training. We go to Nesta's point of view now, and they are at the training rings, and Devlin, who we met in other books, asks why she's here. And she just says witchcraft, because I think in the last book he was like, "Get that witch away!"
Yeah, she likes to make fun and be like, "Ooh, witchy," which I actually really love.
It's my favorite. Cassian tells Devlin, like, she's the High Lady's sister and deserves respect, and she will be training here. And Devlin says any weapons she touches must be buried afterwards, and to leave them in a pile so that they can, like, get rid of them.
Yikes.
And Cassian refuses, and then Devlin asks if she's bleeding, because if so, she can't touch the weapons at all. So I'm like, obviously that's her period, but I'm like, they would also smell it, I believe, based on everything in this book. Wouldn't they smell it?
Yes! You would think.
So he already knows if she's bleeding or not. Anyway, not the point. But obviously,
or is it the point?
Obviously, it's to show, like, the backwards, like, thought process that the Illyrians still have of, like, if a woman touches them, we're gonna have to get rid of them, and especially a woman who's a witch. Cassian goes to the center of the ring then, and she just sits on a rock and watches him, and he asks what she's doing, and she says that she's attending training, but he can't make her do it. And you're like, eee.
But, like, they should have thought of that.
This is so dumb. Like, why would she want to train here with people who hate her? They're like, oh, she's being so disobedient. She doesn't want to try to learn a new skill that's really hard and she's going to be terrible at in front of a whole bunch of people who hate her. So surprised, so shocked.
I know.
But that's not the point. So they kind of argue a bit back and forth, and everybody's watching, and she can see that, like, he's pleading with his eyes. He's like, please do this. And she even thinks to herself, like, don't humiliate him like this in front of these assholes. But, like, her body refuses to get up and do it, and she is not going to yield. And he looks at her in disgust, and she thinks, good, because she also hates herself. And then he starts doing his training on his own. And she just watches and thinks about how beautiful he looks. And I love it. She can't look away from him. And she's felt like that ever since they first met. She always knows where he is, and she's always watching him. And she thinks of him telling her to go, and I don't even know what this is. So she thinks of him telling her to go during the Akawar battle, like when they were both going to, they were both going to die. He was like, save yourself. And she was like, I can't. No. And it kind of makes her think back to, like, they almost started a relationship then. And she's like, she was ready for it in that moment. But then her father died. The war was awful. She fell into a spiral. And now she isn't even the same person that she was then anymore. So she doesn't know how she could ever get back to those feelings. Which I think is important to bring up.
Can I just, like, add to at how much this mimics sort of Feyre's story? You know what I mean? Like, the whole, like, having something traumatic happen and then needing to, like, find your way back to yourself in order to, like, finally accept a relationship that's, like, being laid out for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Moore actually shows up then to take them back, and she calls Cassian pretty, and she asks what Nesta's doing, and she says taking a break. And Moore tells her that her vote would have been to drop her in the human worlds, and Nesta says that she knows that, and she says, good thing being Feyre's sister has its advantages. And I just don't know why Moore needs to be such a dick to her. Like,
but I get where Moore is coming from, right? Like, it's essentially Feyre is Moore's, like, best friend.
Yeah.
Like, they're family, and, like, this person has been mooching off of her for, like, a year, and is just generally a terrible person and hurts Feyre over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, I sort of get her being like, if this were me, I would have, like, gotten rid of you immediately, because she doesn't add anything to their, like, group. She doesn't do anything.
I feel like it would have made more sense if we're trying to actually help Nesta heal, to not have Moore be this bitchy and around. Like, if we're actually trying to make her heal, let's not put her into situations where somebody is actively angry at her all the time. It just seems counterproductive,
I guess.
Moore also tells her that she doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt, and good people like Cassian are giving her that benefit of a doubt. And Nesta knows that, though she, like, obviously isn't going to say that to Moore, but she knows that, like, she doesn't deserve this. And she also knows that, like, Moore has dealt with the monsters that are in the Hewn City and, like, terrible people, and she sees Nesta like them. And so, like, I guess Nesta even understands, like,
why Moore is so resentful.
Yeah, more than I would be able to if I were in her situation.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a bit later, and Nesta is in the library, and she's annoyed about Moore, and she went to the library because it was either this or sitting alone with herself, and that is more unbearable than doing work. And she's thinking of Hybern's attack that was in the library, and how Bryaxis is gone now. So he's still missing, good to know. And how Cassian came and helped her when they were attacked. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, like, not a great spot for her, this library. Like, let's put her in this place where she has PTSD from. But she goes to see Klothos, who is the high priestess in the library. And she obviously looks at Klothos, and, like, I guess we met her in last book, I think. But she kind of has, like, her hands are wrecked beyond use, and she actually doesn't have a tongue anymore. And I think Feyre said, or Rhys basically said in the last book, that the men who did it to her were, like, healing her at the same time so that it would set like this. And so it's awful. But she has a piece of paper and a pen that like write her what she would say. So it's convenient and it can communicate. So that's good.
Yeah.
But Nesta also thinks like it was males that hurt her, and it brings her back to thinking about the cauldron moment and not being able to help Elaine or herself. Like her body wasn't her own, and she kind of like has a flashback moment, kind of like that triggered her, and it's like a PTSD flashback basically. But she pushes it back and she thinks like this happens often, so like it's no real surprise that she's drinking herself to death. So Clothos passes her a note saying that she can begin by shelving books on level 3, and she's to work for 5 hours, and Clothos tells her so those are the only 2 real things that she says, and Nesta's just like, sure, I can do that. Nesta looks down though, and like she starts to think that she's worthless and she's nothing and she hates everything that she is. Mm-hmm. And she's so tired and she wants to be anywhere but in her own head. So like, it's just really sad. Time slips away as she's stacking the books, and she doesn't really have too much time to be in her head because she's so like busy trying to figure things out, where things are. It's a pretty fun job. I worked at Chapters stocking books, and you're alphabetizing things. Good times. Mm-hmm. So other priestesses are smiling at her, and she knows they accept her presence here, and she's kind of like doesn't understand why, but like not anybody is allowed in the library. It is for like healing priestesses, and like clearly this is to show that like she needs healing too, but like she doesn't think she deserves it, so she doesn't feel like she should be there. So it's interesting. At the end of her shift, she goes over to Clothos, who gives her a note that says thank you for your assistance and that she'll see her tomorrow, and it tells her to wear clothes that she doesn't mind wrecking because she will ruin her beautiful gowns down here. And she also says it was nice to meet you, and that Feyre speaks highly of her. And Nesta calls her a liar, but kind of in like a funny way. It's not like she's like, nobody likes a liar, but you're like, oh. Nesta goes to supper after, and she's alone, and she thinks like Cassian is obviously annoyed with her, and she asks the house for wine, but none appears, and the house just gives her water. So she stands up and says, keep your wine, I'll get my own.
So, yeah, she is frustrated.
Yes.
Her first day did not go well.
No.
So, we don't even get to see the end of that. Like, we don't get to see what happens next right away, because we go back to Moore and Cassian's point of view. Moore is taking him to the human lands, more specifically to Jurian Vassa and Lucian's manor house. They're all living together, like the 3 amigos. But they actually do have a name for themselves. They call themselves the Band of Exiles.
Which is funny.
It is funny. So Cassian, like, he hadn't thought, so like we gotta think back to earlier, when Rhys gave him the mission of like, I don't know. Like, okay, so the mission is like he wants him to try and figure out what the Mortal Queens are planning, right? And so for some reason, Cassian like automatically assumes that this means he has to become a courtier.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why he makes that leap.
Yeah.
But like he does. He's like, oh, this means I have to play nice and be a courtier and, like, attend, like, to royal things. And that's not me. And I'm no good at all that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he didn't actually say that he wanted you to do it that way. He just said, find out information on the Mortal Queens for me. Find out what they're planning.
Yeah.
Because Asriel is doing too much.
Yeah.
So, like, anyway, besides, it's the one thing that, like, sort of bugs me about this whole premise.
Yeah, and I just don't get it. I don't. That's it.
Anyway. So, he hadn't thought that he would start that mission today. But after the whole training session with Nesta and being really frustrated, he was like, nope, guess I'm doing this. I'm too frustrated. So Moore just, like, drops him at the house and, like, oh, sorry, no, I lied. So, as soon as he dropped Nesta back at the House of Wind, he pieces out immediately and goes to the river house. And he tells Feyre and Rhys that he failed. Like, one day in, he's like, I failed.
I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. And Amryn is there, and she essentially says, like, let her dig her own grave before offering her a hand. And he said, like, he thought that's what this whole year has been, letting her dig her own grave, like, letting her, like, wallow in all of her, like, self-pity and, like, all of her despair and, you know, and, like, he was like, wasn't that what this whole thing was? But apparently, Amryn just says to keep offering his hand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he arrives at the manor house. Moore immediately pieces out. And Lucien opens the door and informs him that his brother Eris is here. And all Cassian could think about was the pain that Eris inflicted on Moore and how one day he would make Eris suffer.
Fun.
And we actually get...
I want a book from the point of view of Eris. I want to know more. I need to know more. I need it.
Yeah. So here's the thing is, like, I fully, like, we get a little something in this conversation that a lot of people have been speculating about, and it makes a lot of people want a book or something from Eris's point of view, because he sort of drops some clues that not everything is as it seems.
Yeah.
So, we gotta wait for future books to find out what that is.
Will be 4 years, I guess, before this book.
Yeah.
I'm assuming the next book is going to be, like, Az and Elaine. So then by the time we get a Moore book, and, like, Eris will be part of a Moore book, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so Cass, like, he said he's gonna make Eris suffer, and he doesn't really care that Eris is sort of trying to be good now, and, like,
They're
trying
allies.
to earn everyone's trust. Like, he's just gonna destroy him. It's like, you don't change. So he's fully like, nope, you are who you are, and I'm gonna get you. So he's, like, so angry just in general about this whole, like, thing with Moore, like, it's bringing it all back. And he looks at Eris's face, and it's like, he really wants to, like, say something to him, or, like, beat him up, or do something. Yeah. But he has to remind himself that Rhys asked him to do this, and, like, he has to keep his cool. He has this, like, idea that him as a courtier, he has to learn, like, what to say and what not to say, and, like, play those mind games that Rhys is so good at. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, those royal people, how they, like, cut those, like, they, like, say those cutting things under the guise of pleasantries, and, like,
Nesta's very good at it.
Yes.
Let her do it. Let her teach him. Like,
yeah. So, like, it seems like that's sort of what Cass thinks Rhys wants. And for him to be, like, this subtle, like, I don't know.
It's not who he is.
Yes, but it's like, this is what he expects, he thinks that Rhys expects.
Yeah. I just think...
So he keeps...
I just feel like he could find his own way. He could find a different way to do this. Like, he doesn't need to fit in this mold. He's his own person. I find it annoying. I'm like, why are we doing this?
Right. Yeah, and I just feel like Rhys didn't say anything about him behaving in that way.
Yeah. He's taking this on because he feels so inferior. He's taking on that this is what is expected of him, even though that's not what was stated.
Yeah. Anyway, so he briefly thinks that, like, he shouldn't mention any of the questions he has for Vassa about the Mortal Queens in front of Eris. But then he's like, no, you know what? I will do that because Eris, like it or not, is technically our ally and more trusts him, apparently. So.
Sure.
And, like, this is what he's thinking about. He doesn't like having to, like, play the mind games, like, deciding what to say versus what not to say. And, like,
yeah.
You know.
I would have been like, oh, I'll come back when you don't have company.
Yeah. Right? And, like, he doesn't like having to think about, like, all these lies that he has to construct before speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he bows to Vasa and reminds us who she is. So if you forgot from the last book, she is one of the mortal queens that was sold by the other queens to a sorcerer lord who bewitched her to be a firebird by day and a human by night. So she's a queen, but her kingdom is probably, like, taken over by now. We don't know by who. Or if it's, like, divvied up amongst the other queens.
Well, yeah, I don't really understand the whole queens thing. Like, do they just rule as one in one castle?
I don't think so.
Do they each have castles and, like, rule their own section?
Yeah, I think that's more accurate.
I don't think we ever really get definitively what they do.
Maybe not. So Cass asks Lucian how the spring court is doing. And all he gets is fine. So, like, I'm assuming Tamlin, like, he's sort of asking, like, is Tamlin still being a tool? We can safely assume he is.
Yeah. Also, it's like, this is my reason for being here.
Cass then asks why Eris is there. And he tells him straight up that a couple dozen of his soldiers were on patrol in the Autumn Courtlands a few days ago, and they've disappeared. There's no trace, not even from Eris's, like, he has this breed of hounds that have tracking magic, so they can, like, track with their dogginess, but it's also a form of magic or something.
Yeah.
And apparently, like, the hounds detected, like, this weird scent that was, like, human, but also not really.
The hounds talk?
No, I'm assuming they can, like, implant, almost like offer up the memory to their master or something, maybe.
That would make sense.
Eris thinks that it could be someone trying to trigger another war, and then he's like, heck, maybe it's Rhys. Like, just to sort of be a shit disturber.
Yeah.
And then Cass is like, maybe you did it. Maybe you abducted your own men to sort of lay blame at us.
Yeah.
And Jurian and Vasa cut in then that, like, the humans here, like, because I guess Cass is, like, suggesting, like, maybe they accidentally wandered over into human lands and died, like, got killed, whatever. And Jurian and Vasa are like, no, humans here don't want any trouble, and they're staying away from the wall, like, where the wall used to be, the border.
Yeah.
And they also say that human queens aren't stupid, and they wouldn't leave a human scent at the site. Like, they would try and figure out a way to conceal their scent. So, obviously, whatever scent is there on purpose. And also, she's like, it's stupid. Why would they come across the ocean to take men from the Autumn Court instead of, like, going after some fae on their own continent?
Yeah.
And also, on top of that, why go after Eris's men when he could take Tamlin's and they wouldn't notice because Tamlin's not leading right now? And then Cassian thinks about how Rhys has actually been visiting Tamlin to make sure that Tamlin is ready in case they need him. But he doesn't understand how Rhys can stand to be near him.
Well,
and this is when, Sorry?
I know, that's fair.
Yeah. Oh, it's 100% fair. Like, Tamlin has done nothing. Well, he's done one redeemable thing.
Yeah.
2 redeemable things.
What was the second one?
One, he helped Feyre get away when they were rescuing Elaine.
Yeah.
And then he
and then he gave the power to get Rhys back. Yes. Okay, that's the second one.
Yeah.
All I could think of was, although if he didn't, I think she would have killed him. So I don't think he really had a choice in that one. He can tell himself all he wants that he had a choice, but I don't think he did.
Anyway, then he thinks, this is the moment that I talked about earlier. He thought of Thomas. He doesn't actually know Thomas's name, but he thinks of the fear in Nesta's eyes when she was human and he went to her house for something. He accidentally touched her, and she immediately got, like, this look of fear in her eyes, and he knew that, like, somebody had touched her not in a nice way.
Yeah, in a way that she didn't consent to.
Yes, so he...
I'll send you that thing now, because it's all in that one chapter. It's called Wings and Embers.
I feel like I've read it, because I remember the title. Anyway, so he just says he's, like, when he finds out who it is, he's gonna rip his skin from his bones. And he said the last time he let himself sink into the level of rage he feels when he thinks about this guy touching Nesta, he said the last time he felt like that, an entire Illyrian camp was destroyed.
Hey.
So this is why he's like, I don't understand how Rhys can be near Tamlin, because, you know, Tamlin did things that Nesta did not, or Tamlin did things that that Feyre did not really consent to, like locking her up and like ignoring her being so sick. So like he doesn't understand how Rhys can like interact with him.
Yeah, and Tamlin took her back when she was like, I don't want to go back. I am good where I am. So yeah, it's all not consented.
Anyway, he was just like thinking how he couldn't believe that Rhys asked him to play courtier like this, and like he didn't think it was in him, and it's just not his personality. And then like he gets back to the conversation at hand about the human queens, and they think like they're talking about how the human queens, like, what would be the point in coming across? And I guess they suggest like maybe before he died, maybe Hybern taught them a thing or two about treachery and like subterfuge. But Vass is like, they don't need his help. Like they've been dealing with greater monsters than Hybern, which is an interesting thing to say.
Like, yeah, who, what?
Yeah,
when?
So Cass asks which queen would be bold enough to do something like this, and Vassa tells him it's Brialyn, who's the youngest one, who is now the oldest crony one, who hates Nesta and wants revenge. And it's like, of course it's that one.
Yeah, it's funny though that she was like, oh my god, it made them fey and beautiful, I'm gonna jump right in. And then it was like, and now you're old.
Yeah.
But still fey.
I mean, I guess that's something.
Yeah, I guess you'd still live a long time, but like, does it matter then?
Yeah.
Would you want that? I don't know. Interesting
don't know
questions.
So Jurian tells Cassian to send Asriel to track Brialyn so they can see if she's up to something. In other words, send Az to track this human queen and see if she's up to something. But, like, they can't figure out how she would get the soldiers away because she can't winnow as a human. But Vass is like, no, she kind of can. And they're like, what?
They really know nothing. Like, why didn't they get all of this information before now?
Yeah, and she says, like, mortal queens can do it. It's not called winnowing. They call it something else. But, they need each other. They all need to be together to do it. And Eris is like, be that as it may, I have it on good authority that the other queens are not there, and Brialyn is alone right now. So maybe they do all share a castle, but that seems weird. Why would 5 or 6 queens, like, the power struggles
I know. I think I may be making shit up. I think it's 7. And then Vassa's 1, but she's never with them because she's away. 1 is now dead. So it's 5 left, yeah. Yeah, so that makes sense. And also 7 is like a holy number to SJM, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird. Like, I don't understand. Like, they're all ruling together, but how and why?
So Vassa says she doesn't think Briellen could do this without someone powerful backing her, and tells them to look at Koshi. Kochi?
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know.
We try our best.
We try our best, yeah. He is the sorcerer lord that cursed her originally. And Cassian remembers that the bone carver mentioned he had a brother with that name. And he says that out loud. And Vassa's like, yeah, that's true. Koshi was the bone carver's older brother. But he's confined to the lake that she now is like tied to, due to an ancient spell. And apparently he is older than the sea, and some say he is death itself.
Interesting.
So, Vassa is worried that, like, Koche would do all of this to free himself and impose himself as this world's master. I mean, hey, plans of world domination gotta start somewhere.
It's true.
So, Cassian goes to leave, and Eris just follows him out and tells him that, like, whatever he's planning, whatever he's investigating, he wants in. Because apparently, his father has already pledged their soldiers to Briellen in the war she wants to create.
Wild. Like, why? I don't Because he's a villain! It's, like, so dumb.
Yeah. Like, why, like,
yeah.
Baron hates humans. Why would he align with one? I don't know. Anyway. Eris, like, further explains that their Baron caught a whiff of Briellen's schemes and went to her palace a month ago to talk. And obviously Eris didn't go, but sent his best soldiers with his father.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came back, they're actually the same soldiers who are now missing.
That can't be connected.
I know, right? And he even said when they came back, they smelled weird. Like that humany off smell was on them. And they didn't seem like themselves. They seemed like really aloof.
Yeah.
And then he also said that the same smell is on the gifts that Briellen sent to earn Baron's favor. So I guess she sent a bunch of gifts to, like, sweet talk him into joining her. Bribe him, yeah. And they all have that weird smell. So
Interesting.
Yes, but like, I don't think we get many answers about this.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So Eris, like, he wants to be allies. He's trying really hard. But he also essentially threatens Cassian to be allies. Like, because I guess Cass is sort of being cagey a little bit. And is like, listen, Reese will deal with you. Like, you guys work together. Do whatever you want. But, like, he doesn't really want to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's sort of like, ooh, you better be careful or I'll let some things slip, right? So it's sort of forcing Cass to, like, play nice. And, like, Cass even, like, says, like, to prevent all this, why don't we just take your dad out?
Yeah.
But, like, Eris is like, no, because that would, like, out me to the nobles that I'm working with you.
Yeah.
And then Cassian's like, well, why don't I just kill you now? And he's like, well, if you do that, my dad would convince other courts and territories to join Briellen too. And then the Night Court will be wiped off the map, since Reese and Feyre don't have an heir yet. And all it would take to earn Briellen's favor would be to get Nesta and give her to Briellen.
Yeah.
So essentially threaten Nesta's safety and well-being into playing nice. So obviously Cass is like, fine, I'll play nice and we'll do an exchange of information. So finally we go back to Nesta, who was just about to find her own wine. So she's going for the 10,000 stairs, buddy. She is going for it. So she thought, obviously, her fae body could do it. Because it's a fae body.
Yeah. We thought that too.
We did, yeah. She quickly learns that she cannot. She is pretty terrible. So at first she's like dizzy from the spinning. Because I guess it's like one long winding tower.
Yeah, it sounds awful.
Like a tight coil.
Yeah.
But like even still, I don't understand how you're getting dizzy from going down the stairs. I know.
Sometimes get dizzy going downstairs anyway if I'm going down for long enough and like my vision kind of goes weird.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fine. I'll let you have it.
Thank you.
So like the effort of keeping herself from falling is really hard. And she only makes it essentially 111 steps before turning around and going back up. And you're right. I find it really funny. You said earlier that, like, how is it going down the steps that are hard, but going up, it, like,
no problem.
If you're so tired that you can no longer go down a step, how on earth are you getting back up?
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. Anyway, so she's like crawling on her hands and knees to get back up some of those steps.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And when she finally like crawls through the door, she's like hot. She's sweating and she's panting and she's really annoyed about like with her own self. And Cassian is there watching her.
So Akko.
Yeah. So, I think we go back to his point of view now, Cassian's, and apparently after he met with Eris and, like, Vassa and Jurian and Lucian, he went and reported everything to Rhys, and his orders were to keep communicating with Eris. So, Rhys is essentially putting this responsibility of Eris as an ally, just shoving that at Cassian. So, after dinner, he ate at the river house, and he went back up to the House of Wind and finds Nesta crawling on her hands and knees, and he finds it satisfying. Right? Like, I guess.
You know what else he wants her to do?
Yeah, it's true. But, like, he doesn't say anything negative.
No.
Right yet. He tells her that when Rhys and him and Az were young, doesn't say how young, I'm assuming adult though, like in their 20s.
Yeah.
They had to do those stairs as punishments. So, like, they would have to go all the way down them and then come all the way up as a punishment. And apparently they all vomited multiple times. And, like, he said that, like, Rhys would throw up, and then that would make Az throw up, and then that would make Cassian throw up, like, just the
So
sight
gross.
of one of them throwing, and then they'd have to, like, keep going down the stairs, and they keep throwing up, and then they'd have to walk back up through their own puke. So, really lovely imagery there. Anyway, so he asked her how many stairs she got, and she said 100, and then he starts to be a little mean, and he calls her pathetic.
Yeah.
And he tells her if she ever wants to stop being a weak little kitten, to come to training and actually participate.
Fair.
And, like, it is fair, but also, like, I just don't understand why they don't realize sooner that her being super proud and stubborn, the person that she is, and they all know that about her, how they don't realize that having her train in a ring in front of a ton of people would work for her.
It's so dumb.
Yeah. Anyway, so the next morning she is super sore everywhere just from the stairs and, like, especially her legs. Cassian obviously knows it. So, like, they're sitting and just sparring verbally, I guess. And Az comes in and, like, she verbally spars with him, tells him he's the prettiest one of the three males. And Nesta tells Cass that she wants to train with Az instead. And, you know, I think it all stems from, like, the fact that Cass makes her emotionally uncomfortable and sexually frustrated. So,
yes.
At least this way she can work with Az. But Cass is like, Az is actually a brutal trainer. You do not want him as your trainer.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm the nice one. Anyway, and he's also like, Az can't, because he has to start spying Brialyn today. So he's like, training is still gonna fall to him. And then he teases her about his bedroom habits, which then turns him on. Like, him teasing her about his bedroom habits. He, like, talks about, like, I think he just talks about, like, I can't remember if it's this part or not, but he talks about, like, jerking himself off.
He can jack himself off any time of the day. It doesn't have to just be at night. Is that
this
time?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
It could
be. But anyway. Yeah. He turns himself on because he starts to imagine her involved.
He's really just hurting himself here.
He's a horn dog, yeah.
Yeah.
And the scent of him being turned on makes Az uncomfortable.
Just wait, Az. Just wait.
Yeah. So they go to training, and Nesta still just sits on the rock and doesn't do anything. After an hour of Cass going through the training himself, he sends Nesta into Rhys's mother's house to warm up while he inspects the Illyrian rebuilding rank efforts. So they lost a ton of soldiers in the war, so they're trying to rebuild their ranks. Are they doing that by, like, having sex and having a lot of babies?
Don't know.
So when they get into the house, I guess he walks her into the house. And originally, she wasn't even going to go into the house. He was like, just get in. He was frustrated, like, just get in the house. Mm-hmm. But he sees her staring at the fire. I guess the house, like, they walked in and the house immediately sprang to life and, like, lit a fire. And a popping log makes her flinch. And he obviously sees that this made her go somewhere traumatic. Mm-hmm. Like, she had gone really pale. And he tells her that if she doesn't want to stay in the house, she could go visit some of the shops that are around the town.
Yeah.
So she takes the opportunity. She's like, yes, I'm going. So she does go into a shop, and it's a clothing store, and it's being ran by a female, which is, I guess, oddish.
Well, we've heard Illyrians, if a woman touches a dagger, gotta bury it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So she asks for warmer fighting leathers, because she's not obviously exercising, so therefore she's not warming up, and it's frigid in the mountains all the time, so she wants something that's, like, fur-lined or fleece-lined. And the girl doesn't pry at all when Nesta's like, I'm not actually training, I'm just watching. So the girl's like, fine, it's like she gives her a look that means that I understand that this means it's against your will. You don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And Nesta then notices that she has scars on her wings. And I guess this girl notices that she looked and tells her without shame that she had been clipped. That her father was traditional and believed that a woman's place was in the home. So again, more of that Illyrian, like, traditional, brutal, very antiquated views on women.
Yeah. It's freedom. Like, flying is...
Yeah. Anyway.
Caging them.
Yes. So Nesta asks, like, could they ever be healed? And the girl says, like, wings are so complex that short of Thesan, High Lord of Dawn, who's, like, the most talented, like, his gift is a gift of healing. Mm-hmm. So, like, apart from him, probably not.
But we're also, like, Feyre has some of his powers, so that's a option. And, like, Hellion's friends with Nesta's people. So, like, it's possible. I think it's more a, what's that word?
Hyperbole?
Maybe. It's gonna happen in another book, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so, like, after she says, like, probably not, Nesta says sorry. And, like, I appreciate the sentiment, and I appreciate that she's saying sorry. But I don't understand why. She's literally been a bitch to every single other person that she has met. Why is all of a sudden this random person getting her empathy?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like, it just seems odd. But, besides the fact, the girl then says she'll make inquiries to her suppliers about fleece-lined leathers. And then Nesta realizes, crap, I've been cut off. I have no money.
I feel like they would pay for this.
I don't.
She doesn't even ask.
No, but the reason why she's cold is because she's not doing the training. They're not going to pay for her to be warm and sit there.
I think her sister would.
I don't. Anyway, like, she admits to the girl that she's been cut off, because, like, the girl knows who she is, and knows that she's the High Lord's sister-in-law. And she's like, yeah, but they cut me off. So the girl introduces herself as Emery. And Nesta's like, oh, I'm Nesta. And she's like, I know, you killed the King of Hybern. And Nesta's like, yep. And all Emery says is, good. So Nesta just thanks her for her help, which shocks even Nesta that she's being polite. And then she leaves. And, like, people in the street shrink away from her and are like, get away from my children, my baby.
Witch.
Yeah. And she thinks that, like, they're right to hide their children from her because she is a monster. And I'm like, does she think she's a monster because she killed the King of Hybern?
No. Just the way she acts, I think.
So, they get back from training. She heads down to the library. Cass essentially, like, dumped her there and left with more. And, like, she feels this twinge of jealousy because he was carrying more away. Because obviously he has to carry her past the wards so that she can winnow them out.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, she can't help but feel a little bit jealous because she knows that they had a past together. More and Cassian.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the house, before she went to the library, magicked her, like, a bowl of soup because it was very cold. But she's like, I'm not hungry, and then, like, walks to the library. After a while, she's like, oh, I am hungry. I wish I had that soup. And the house magics the same bowl of soup to her in the library with a napkin and a glass of water.
So nice.
It is nice. But, like, at the same time, she tells the house, I'm not hungry, because she's trying to be stubborn and not take it.
Yeah.
But then, a priestess overhears her and asks who she's talking to. And I think she even tries to say, the house, but then when she turns to look, the house had taken the soup and the napkin and the water away to make her actually look crazy.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. I feel like the house is my favorite character.
I know, me too. So much fun.
So Nesta is, like, curt with the acolyte, the priestess, because she was sort of like, I guess Nesta was like, I'm just taking a break or something, and the girl starts, like, judging her and being like, already, like, you're taking a break. So Nesta's like, sort of, she doesn't say, like, get out of my face or anything, but she's sort of like, who are you to talk to me like that? But the girl, like, doesn't cower, doesn't back down or anything, but she's also not a bitch back. But she introduces herself as Gwyneth, but most people call her Gwyn. Would you call her Gwyn or Gwen?
Gwyn.
Okay.
Is what in my brain.
That's what was in mine too. I just wanted to make sure that, like, I wasn't alone. So Nesta, so again, she was sort of curt to Gwyn, but then sort of remembers that Gwyn is here because she has experienced extreme trauma at the hands of a man.
Yeah.
So it makes her sort of try and speak a little bit softer to her, which obviously Gwyn realizes.
Yeah.
And says, like, I can tell you're starting to pity me, but don't. Like, treat me like a person, please.
Mm-hmm.
So Nesta's like, okay, go away.
Fair.
Because Nesta's rude to everybody, and Gwyn's like, okay! And then just, like, walks out. Like, she just seems like one of these characters is, like, a really happy person, and, like, you could you could be the absolute worst, and she'll still talk to you, like, hi, how are you? Oh, okay, thanks, bye. Like, perpetually peppy.
Yeah.
So, she finishes, Nesta, like, keeps shelving books, finishes her shift, gets back to the house, and then she wants the soup. So she asks the house for it, but it doesn't give it to her until she says please and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at first she demands the soup, and then the house is like, huh, no thank you. And then she says please, and then the house gives her the soup. After eating, so then we're skipping to Cass's point of view now. He ate, and he finds Nesta in the private library. Is the private library off her room? Or is it just a smaller library somewhere else in the house?
A smaller library in the house, yeah.
Okay. So, she's eating cake. And he tries to convince her to train by eating her cake.
Mm.
He, like, grabs forkfuls of it, and she's like, that's my cake! And he's like, try and take it from me. And she, like, tries to stab him with the fork or something like that, and he just keeps, like, swatting it away and being like, come on, take your cake back. Like, this is your cake. Don't you want it? So that's how he's trying to, like, convince her to train. And,
he's
like,
trying everything. He can only get, like, I guess.
So, afterwards, he does leave her half the cake and walks out. So that night she goes to bed, but she wakes up freezing. I guess she fell asleep before getting under the covers. So the house lights her fire in her room, but she tells it she doesn't want the fire. So after the incident in the house where, like, she's zoned out in front of the fire and, like, flinches at a popping log, and then after this event, like, I think we can sort of see a pattern of her having a thing about fire.
I think we get it in Frost and Starlight.
Yeah.
I think we're in her point of view at one point, and she's, like, looking at the fire and says that the pop of the logs reminds her of her father's neck snapping.
Yeah. So, yeah. So she just hates fire. Like, can't even handle it at all. She'll be freezing cold instead of using a fire. So later that night, she wakes from a nightmare of her father's death. And it is, like, she says she can't stop the thoughts of her father's neck cracking and the sound it makes.
Sorry. It's not funny at all. It's just, no. I just said that.
You literally just said that, yeah. And then she also says she can't stop thinking of the cauldron shoving her down. And, like, her magic flares inside of her, and she wants it to go away. So she wants to go get a drink. So, like you said, not only is she using alcohol to sort of, like, numb her trauma and her PTSD and her depression, she's also using it to, like, mute her magic.
Mm-hmm.
So that she doesn't use it. And remember, at the beginning, like, they don't even know if she still has it because she keeps it on such a short leash.
Yeah.
And, like, then we gotta remember, too, that when Rhys spoke about his magic, if you keep it locked away for so long, like, it can make you go crazy. Like, you need to let some of it out, right? Burn some of it off. And she refuses to even let a drop escape.
It's no wonder she's not in a good place mentally. Like, even just this seems like it would fuck her up.
Yeah. So, again, she wants to go get a drink. So she tries the stairs again, and she starts to go down them, but obviously she's, like, she's not concentrating. She's not in a good space. So she trips and falls and, like, hits her knees and her face. And she starts, like, rolling down the stairs. And she puts a hand out against the wall to, like, try and stop herself. And I guess some of her magic comes out to help stop her. And, like, it leaves a handprint with, like, grooves in it in the stone, which is wild that her magic, like, burned away stone.
Yeah.
The next morning, she looks real bad. She got a black eye, she cut her chin, and, like, Cassian obviously teases her about it. And he knows exactly what happened. I'm assuming he either heard her or checked out the stairs this morning or something.
Yeah.
Or, like, he stood at the top of the stairs and waited or something like that. But she's like, you heard, why didn't you help me? And he's like, I would have if you fell much more, like, you know, I wouldn't have let you die. It's like, thanks a lot, dude. But he's obviously trying to goad her into training. And she thinks about how when she first saw him, he was the most amazing male she'd ever seen. Like, I guess when she was human.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that, like, when they were at camp, when they're at, like, training, she sees the other Illyrians looking at him and sort of, like, mocking him with their eyes. Like, she can tell that they don't respect him. And she says last year she would have unleashed her power on them for insulting him. But she doesn't do that anymore because she deserves his disappointment and his resentment and his disgust. And that's the only reason she doesn't defend him. Like, she doesn't want him to like her.
Yeah. She's like, I think we're far gone. Too far. Too late.
Yeah. Right? So that evening, after not training, after working in the library, the house, like, she goes to go into the private library, and the house locks the door, doesn't let her in. And rude. She's like, come on, like, I just want to sit down with a book and a meal. And the house is like, okay, head to the dining room, please. Like, just by opening some doors. It's like, you go this way. So she has to go eat with Az and Cass. So they're all sitting there, and she overhears, obviously, their conversation about Az's work spying on Briallen, and they mention Vassa. And Nesta really resents Vassa because after the war... And this is sort of a dumb thing for Vassa to also say. Vassa spoke to Nesta about how awesome her father was and how he was a true father to her. Like, what, he was gone, not even, like, he was gone, 6 months tops?
Yeah, I don't, like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And, like, apparently he fought for her with Koche to be released and, like, managed to broker a deal. And, like, Nesta is pissed. Because her father became someone courageous and fought for somebody that wasn't his children, and that it took a strange woman to bring him out of his despair. And I agree with her absolutely. This would piss me off to no end. I would be so frustrated. Like, so frustrated. And I agree, I don't like her dad.
No.
Like, did he sort of save the day last year with bringing that army? Kinda sure.
Yeah.
But, like, that doesn't make up for how much of a dick he is.
Yeah.
Anyway. The topic goes to her training. And Azriel asks why she isn't training. And she tells him, you can't catch me training, or, like, I will not be training in that village. So, like, obviously, she doesn't want to train in front of the other people.
Like, surprise.
Yeah. She also, like, calls Reese an asshole. Which obviously offends Cass. And he tells her that the training is supposed to help her, not punish her. And essentially says, like, I'm fucking done with you. And then he says, everybody hates you. And, like, that's hurtful.
Yeah. Yep, it is.
Even though, like, it is true. Like, nobody likes her right now.
Yeah.
But it's kind of rude to say it out loud. So,
yep.
Yeah. So, she doesn't want to admit that the words actually hurt. So, she just, like, sort of is like, okay, fine. And so, like, he storms out, and then she's sitting there, and Az is sort of staring at her, and, like, I can't tell if he's staring at her with, like, pity, or just, like, calculating, or just, like, blank stare. I don't know how he's looking at her.
No.
But she says it's like he can see her thoughts. So she's like, I'm going back to work. So she goes back to the library. So Cass is on the roof, and he's brooding. Because that's what men do. They brood.
It's true. All men brood.
Yeah. So he, like, saw her today on the rock and saw that she wanted to get up. Like, they had a moment where he thought she actually would get up. Mm-hmm. But her stubbornness made her refuse. And now he just feels like he failed, and she will never get over that instinct. Like, he thinks that her stubbornness is going to keep her down perpetually. So Feyre comes to talk to him. Apparently Rhys told her that Cass is thinking very loudly. So Feyre comes to talk to him and assures him that Nesta doesn't hate him. And together they're trying to think of what they can do. And they're like, it feels hopeless for both of them because for some crazy reason, they both care for her. And they don't want to see her self-destruct anymore.
Yeah.
So, Cass then notices the training ring that they set up with Feyre. And has an epiphany! Fuck's sakes.
I know. But he barely has an epiphany. Like, it is so, like, he's like, oh, wait. She said she won't train there. Holy shit. And you're like, yes, we've been yelling this forever.
Yes, we have. So he tries to give Feyre a kiss on her cheek to be like, thanks for talking through this with me. But that shield around her, made by Rhys, like, it means that he can't even touch her face. Like, he touches the shield.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it shielded everything, including her scent, which I think you maybe have already said.
Yeah.
And he cannot physically touch her, which is just a yikes.
Yeah. Apparently she did say it's because she's trying to learn how to, like, get out of this kind of shield or something. Like, it's a training exercise. Like, is Rhys good enough at casting them? Is she good enough at getting out of them?
Yeah. It's bullshit.
I hate it.
So, the next morning, Cass set up the training ring at the house and realized Nesta was proud and stubborn and didn't want to show weakness in front of all the Illyrians. What a shock!
Yeah.
So, of course, training in front of a bunch of Illyrians is a bad idea.
Yes.
So, like, he brings her up to the training ring and shows it to her. And he sees the hesitation, so he makes her an offer. 1 hour of training for anything she wants. So, like, could she not say, I want to go back to my apartment and live there and forget this whole thing?
She could. But I don't think he has as much control over it as, like... Also, they're tearing down that building. But, yeah. Theoretically, yes.
So...
Bring me a bottle of wine. Bring me a crate of wine.
Yes.
Like, unlimited wine.
Bring me a shipment. So she makes the agreement. She's like, okay, deal. And they shake on it, and a power zaps between them. So apparently her magic made it more intense and, like, created a tattoo. The same way that Feyre and Rhys had their tattoo agreement.
Do they assume it's her magic? Because, like, yes. Obviously I'm assuming it's something else.
They assume it's her magic.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's the other thing.
So, he, like, takes his shirt off and looks for the tattoo, and there's, like, a mirror over in the training ring that they use for, like, to, like, get your stances and your, like, positions right. So he looks and he sees that it's on, the tattoo is on his back. It's an 8-pointed star. And she's obviously going to have the same one on her back. Mm-hmm. Which I don't really get, because when Feyre had her bargain tattoo, that did not appear on Rhys.
I guess he magicked it away.
Sure. Okay.
But I don't know why we're
fine.
Like, sure. Yeah.
Fine.
I'll buy it, I guess.
We'll take it.
Sure.
What other solution could there be?
Yeah.
So then we're in Nesta's point of view, and he took his shirt off, so she's just staring at his naked torso.
She's drooling.
And she's like, ooh.
Fair.
And, like, she's sort of worried. Like, obviously, she gets turned on by looking at his torso. He can definitely smell that she's turned on. I know. Anyway, but he doesn't, like, push an advantage or anything like that. Like, even smelling that she might be aroused doesn't, like, he's in professional mode, I think, right now. Mm-hmm. So he just asks, are you ready to trade? So training consists of her learning how to use her toes to grip the ground and balance. That's it. Mm-hmm. And, like, she's like, I don't know why I have to do this. Feyre got, like, to start with weapons and, like, punching and everything like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but she already possessed skills of balance and, like, quick feet and, like, soft movements and, like, you know, she had all that hunting training, so she already knew a lot that Nesta did not. Which, bringing that up, reminds Nesta that she's a terrible person because she forced Feyre to go into the woods and hunt while she stayed safe and warm in their cottage. And, like, true. Like, I still, I don't think Nesta's excuse for that is good enough.
No, but, like, I also am just like, what else? Should they both have gone out and done it?
Maybe.
Like, Nesta never would have taken the initiative to do that. Elaine was making plants, but not edible ones. And I think that's the real issue here. Like, they could have been vegetarian and fine if Elaine would have made some fucking carrots instead of, like, peonies.
Yeah, you're not wrong. But, like, and to be fair, I think, too, that if Nesta had taken a larger role in, like, the house, taking care of the house, so, like, I'm actually
the wood.
Yeah, like, chopping the wood and, like, taking care of the house that way while Feyre went out hunting, I don't think it would have been a big deal. Or as big a deal, right?
Yeah, at least be helpful, not be, like, an entitled bitch just because you used to be rich.
Yeah.
Like, you're not anymore. You've got to do something. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Anyway, so at the end of the hour, she is wiped out just from that little bit of toe curlingness. So
all I can think about with toe curling is, like, when they get turned on, then they curl their toes. You know.
Anyway, so because she's so wiped, he's like, how about we do a cool down, and that'll help preserve your muscles and, you know, all that. And so while they're cooling down, she asks if he likes to fly. And he says, yeah, like, of course I do. It's the absolute freedom, right? And then she tells him about how she met Emery. And he's like, he knows, obviously, who she's talking about. And because he knows that she was like, I met a female at a shop. And he knows that she's the only female running a shop. So he actually tells her that they outlawed clipping ages ago, but he says during Amarantha's reign, like, they had to keep a lot of balls in the air when Rhys being imprisoned. So, essentially, like, that Emery is one of those things that fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
Which is really unfortunate, but, you know, she understands. Yeah. And she then actually admits to him that the breathing that they're doing during this cool down actually helps quiet her mind. And he says, like, me too. And then after they're finished, she realizes that they actually did do 2 hours of training. So, like, good job. And Cassian then takes this opportunity to apologize and tells her he didn't mean what he said yesterday when he said not that everyone hated her. He says, no, he says, not everyone hates her. She's here because they don't hate her. And she admits then that she doesn't hate him either, which is nice. They have, like, it's like their first nice moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, moment of sincerity.
Yeah.
So, that afternoon, just like she needs to, she is in the library. She's starving, and her muscles are super sore, and she's like, that cool down did not help. Like, what a lie. And I have to agree with her there. I find doing cool downs does not help as much as...
No.
Right? Like, you're still super sore after. So, like, she's shelving books, and Gwyn finds her and is shocked that, like, she's shelving books by hand. Like, why aren't you using your magic? But they sort of just, like, blow past that. And she tells her about her boss, Meryl, and how she's really difficult to deal with. And apparently Gwyn made a mistake about a book and said that there was a volume that was in the stack that Meryl needed for research, but it was actually a different volume that she had by accident. So she was looking for this book so that she could fix her mistake, because apparently Meryl's gonna, like, go apeshit. So she then also tells Nesta that once the priestesses come into the library, they usually don't leave again unless it's to join the outside world again. So, like, stop being priestesses and just become a member of the outside world. And she's like, what do you guys even do with your time here? Like, you're literally in a building all day and all night. And she says usually they have services at dawn and dusk, and says, like, they're not as boring as you think they are. The music is actually really lovely. And I'm like, church in the morning and church at night, and that's all you do?
Yeah, it doesn't sound great.
No, but I guess it's the life they chose. So after she leaves, Nesta doesn't really know why, but she asks the house if it can find the book Gwyn needed. And it does. And it gives it, like, plops it on Nesta's little table she's working from. And then she asks a priestess where to find Meryl's office, and she goes to deliver it. And she manages to fool Meryl and switch out the books without getting Gwyn in trouble. And she finds Gwyn and tells her she swapped the books, and Gwyn tells her that Meryl is actually researching the Valkyries, which is a clan of female warriors who were better fighters than the Illyrians, but, like, they weren't a race. They were all manner of fae. They were just, like, a fighting ensemble. And the Valkyries are, like, known legends in Norse mythology, and they're sort of everywhere.
Yeah.
So then she says, like, the Valkyries have been wiped out. So there are 3 levels of Valkyrie: Novice, Blade, and Valkyrie. And apparently it was a really high honor to be one. So there's obviously a reason we're getting this information.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes home that evening to a hot meal and a warm bath, and she slept all night with no nightmares. So, like, this is sort of our moment of that one day of training, and, like, she's finally starting to sort of change. We're getting her evolution already.
Yeah.
So the next morning, Cassian is waiting for her in the training ring, but he doesn't know if she'd show up because they really only made a deal for one day of training. And she wasn't at breakfast, so he really doesn't know if she's going to show up or not. But she does, and he realized she was late because her legs were so sore it took her ages to climb the stairs to the roof. But she took her stance, and when he started instructing, she actually listened. So after the training, he helps her stretch out her muscles by, like, touching her legs and, like, you know, like, pushing them them back and stretching them out to and they talk about Sangrava, which is where Gwyn said she was from. That's actually the temple that Hybern sacked, getting the cauldron, which was mentioned very briefly in Mist and Fury. Mm-hmm. The soldiers apparently killed almost all the priestesses but raped the ones too pretty to kill.
Yay.
So obviously Gwyn was one of them.
Yeah.
So that's just a little bit of Gwyn's past and sort of why she is in the library right now. So then we go to Cassian's POV. After training, him and Rhys go to the spring court and meet with Eris. Eris, so, like, they're just in the territory. They don't actually, like, go to Tamlin's house. It's just, like, it's sort of just, like, neutral territory for them. So Eris suggests that they just kill the human queens. Like, that would solve a lot of their issues. And, like, I sort of agree, but Cass and Rhys are both like, that's gonna create more issues than it'll solve.
Yeah.
Which, like, fine.
I suppose.
And, yeah. So Eris sort of implies that Baron wants a war so that he can expand his territory. And sort of insinuates that it's going to be the Spring Court, because Tamlin spends most of his time in beast form, and his land and manor has, like, fallen into disrepair, and, like, there's nobody really ruling the land anymore. So Eris wants his father's throne, and Cass asks him why. And he said it's the same reason he left Morgan untouched at the border.
Interesting. There's something we're missing.
Yes, because then Cass says, no, he left her there to suffer and die. And Eris says, does he really? Ask Morgan, because she finally knows the answer. So this is what I mean about how, like, we get more from Eris's point of view, and Eris admitting to us that, like, that's not what happened. So this narrative that that's what happened didn't actually happen that way. And Morgan knows the truth. So, like, I really want to know what happened.
I know, me too. I don't get it. Like, what else is there? Tell me.
Yeah. But we don't get told.
No.
So, back to Nesta's point of view. She worked in the library all afternoon, but didn't see Gwyn, even though she wanted to, but she didn't really understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes home and she's sore and has no idea why, but she goes to the stairs again and she starts going down them again. And this time she actually makes it to step 150 before her legs give out. So, like, after 2 days of training, she's already getting better.
Yep, of course.
That's always how it works. I know when I start working out after 2 days, I'm 10 times better.
Me too.
Especially when my muscles are sore from standing all day. Anyway, besides the point, she goes back to her room after. Again, going back up the stairs is easy peasy, I guess. And the house has a book, dinner, and a hot bath waiting for her. And she actually tells the house now, it's actually really sad, that the house, she says, house, like, you're my only friend.
Sin.
So sin. And the house magics a giant piece of chocolate cake on a tray across the bath for her to eat while she's soaking. And it's like,
sweet.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's sad. But also,
it is sad.
Like...
But the house is so nice.
I know. I want a magic house.
Me too.
So, that's where we're finishing up this week. Sad note, but with chocolate cake in the bathtub.
Perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's it for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread, and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we will be reading chapters 14 to 28 of A Court of Silver Flames. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.